This is
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Good morning again. Welcome to another edition of Make It Plain. Glad to have with us once again from the Democratic Coalition, and he's known on Twitter as @Funder, always sharing great information and disseminating great information, has become an expert, in fact, in mobilizing vis-a-vis social media. When social media is not taken down, that's another thing. When it still is functioning. We'll get into that too, but we've not talked in a few weeks. Want to get his thoughts on some of the latest news. Scott Dworkin joins us. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you as always. First of all, want to get your take on the whole infrastructure / human infrastructure drama that we're seeing right now, and Manchin's role in it. I know it was going to come to the floor. Progressives pretty much stopped that, which, you know, to many of us is a good thing, people standing up. But what do you think about how that all unfolded and where it's headed?
I think there were a lot of people who thought they were power brokers within the Democratic Party that didn't have the power they thought, and that backfired on them. At the same time, I think that they didn't expect a lot of people to push back in moderate or progressive ways, and they definitely don't expect the progressive pushback because a lot of people are recognizing they got elected because of progressives. And it's not like the Tea Party. It's a much bigger faction of the party than the Tea Party was of the Republican Party. So I'd say a vast majority of the Democratic Party is progressive. And I don't know, where this moderate kind of tilt comes from. Yeah, we have to win elections, but at the end of the day, it's not been helpful to look like this. I really would hope that it be sometimes I say, like, okay, in this situation, what would Mitch do? What would McConnell do in this situation? How would he jam it through? What would he jam through? How would he work this through? And that's a terrible person to compare it to. But in the positive sense of things, how would he handle this? And how can you negotiate through this? And there's times to have those negotiations, and there's times to get stuff done. I'm less worried about our process for like re-election and like what happens, because that's eons away. That's a year from now anyways. And I don't think that we should really focus on that anyways, because that's how you lose elections, is you don't do your job. But all this stalemate from Manchin, but especially Sinema, Manchin, the one thing that I can understand from him is I know where he stands. I know why he stands that way. I know what his reasoning is behind that. We don't know that with Sinema. I've stood next to Sinema before years ago. I think she was a rep, and we were at a Michelle Obama event, and she was probably one of the most progressive members of Congress at that time. Right. She was more giddy about Michelle Obama being there than anyone else in the crowd. So, like, I don't know where things went from there to here. I can see her. She's going to get primaried. I know that, but that's not till 2024. The bottom line is anybody who, not the progressives that are trying to negotiate things, that's not really being a barrier. The barrier is Manchin and Sinema. Speaker Pelosi is not going to bring a vote unless she knows that they're going to have the votes, or they can agree on something in the Senate, because otherwise it's a wasted effort and it looks like Democrats lost, and it's just a terrible PR disaster on top of everything else. And we would not want that to happen. So I think that we're in a better spot than one would think, because there's a negotiating route, but I just don't know what the answer would be to get Sinema on board. I know how Manchin can do this, but they're playing with fire. Everybody is. We're going to have a lot of turmoil to deal with over the next year, especially with the more serious court cases from January 6th coming up. You're going to have the word coup mentioned over and over again. It's all going to affect this legislation, because people are going to want to look like they're on board with supporting America. And obviously, if you don't support our infrastructure, human internet, whether you can see it or not, physically in front of you, whether it's a bridge or not, even that, it's just going to crumble to the ground. And I don't understand why some of these people were for it and they're against it. Some of these people don't stand for anything. They just want to stand against something, make Biden look bad. That's not the progressive viewpoint, obviously. Even AOC went on, I believe, Face the Nation and said, I appreciate President Biden. Yes, he's a moderate, but he'll talk to us. He'll actually listen, and he's listening. He's not like, making the story up in his head or trying to get his outcome. He actually is listening and trying to figure out, okay, how can we meet at the middle of the road? We've got to be able to figure this out. So at least what I sometimes think about is like, where would we be if somebody else had gotten elected, if somebody else were still in the White House? And that disaster, yes, we can talk about the difference between President Biden and former guy Donald, but the staff and the administration and the people, the mess that they've had to clean up over the past 8 months has been devastating. And so like, we've got to deal with that at the same time, the pandemic. And so we're trying to get stuff done at the same time, the infrastructure bill. So like, it's walk, chew gum, walk upside down through up a hill through the snow in the 100-degree heat. Like it's a lot of things at once. And I think some people, are using this to their advantage. And I think that's what's sad about this Manchin and Sinema part of it. I don't blame the progressives for taking a stand. I think that they should have taken one earlier, and it would be stronger at that point. But also, I think we're just getting our footing down as to being in leadership, because we've had to deal with crisis after crisis after crisis. People are dying left and right. We're in the middle of a pandemic still. So, and we were taking care of our families, getting vaccinated. People started marching again now, obviously, as recently as your event that you had hosted in DC and elsewhere, and then the women's marches recently. And so once people get comfortable and are out there again, I think demonstrating, we're going to have a different kind of vibe, because I don't think people really realize how much progressives outnumber any other political faction of any party.
Yeah. More MIP after this message. And we ought to act like that. You all heard what Scott just said. It's very, very important. Why are we running for 2022 now? And then why are we considering, as all of us, as the progressive members of the House are, what better to run on than a full and holistic infrastructure? And that's what I guess some of these moderates and when Manchin and Sinema don't get. And you're right, you're reminding us she can't be primary till 2024. So, I mean, what does she think she's doing, running for 2024 already in a state that is at least purple? I mean, Arizona's changing. Mark Kelly won. I mean, it's a whole nother thing now. So it's really baffling what they're up to. Here's the existential problem, and I'll share with you what I hear, and I'm sure you've heard from the organizations that are on the ground who we count on to mobilize voters every year, right? If the Democrats don't do something, how do we mobilize people again to get back out in the way we got them out in 2020? Now, you hear that from Black Voters Matter and other groups as well. And one of those big issues, frankly, still has to do with the filibuster and what it has held up in the Senate. Even that's existential, Scott, because even that one thing, I even heard somebody who was, I think, a conservative on TV the other day say if they don't do nothing else, they got to deal with voting rights, because that's going to eliminate them from holding on to power, because they won't be able to vote because of voter suppression. That is an existential issue. People for the American Way, League of Women Voters, organizing civil disobedience as we speak at the White House, ongoing protests, because they want Biden to stand up and say, we either have to create a carve out for voting rights or we have to get rid of it. So it still comes back to Manchin. He won't move on the filibuster. Biden doesn't seem to want to challenge him right now. And then these other issues with the infrastructure is like this one person is holding it up. Something has to be done. But what do you think about those who are saying that if this does not change, it will demoralize the Democratic base we're counting on to get out to vote next year?
I don't agree with that. I think that it motivates them, because what I say is we need to elect more senators that make Manchin and Sinema irrelevant, that they can't play these games, that we can override the filibuster, that we can move in that direction. Reelecting Warnock is going to be huge. Winning in Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin. I mean, just those places alone. I truly believe that the blue wave has not finished yet, and I think that once we remind people all these things, all this garbage that keeps on coming out, all these low hits, all these things about Afghanistan, Republicans are writing ads for us. Republicans, all this crazy nonsense that they're doing right now will lose. That loses them the moderate base. Now, here's the biggest thing: is as of right now, I think Trump is going to announce a run for 2024 early next year, before primary season, so that he can primary people. And that puts people in the position, if you're in a swing district outside of Philadelphia or something like that, you're sitting there and he's like, all right, I want you to endorse my race. And then you have to think about either endorsing Trump or not endorsing Trump. And there's repercussions to each of those.
Right.
You get primaried if you don't. But then if you do endorse them, your opponent's going to use that against you, and that could turn people off from voting for you. So they're going to be stuck in that. At the same time, you have the more serious offenders that are going to have trials. Most of them are going to have trials. They're going to want to try and fight this. They're going to lose. But you're going to have that on top of the evidence that comes out from the January 6th committee. And we're talking about even just one text from Melania Trump that was leaked out by a former staffer that said no, where she refused to post a tweet. That went viral all day. So imagine the phone records and all the other evidence that we have. I mean, the evidence and everything else is stacked against them. And the accomplishments that we've made, remember, Republicans didn't want you to get any money. They thought that you'd be fine because you have all the rich buddies or whatever. You don't need a stimulus check. You don't need child tax credit. You don't need any of this stuff. Like, they're against all of this. So reminding them why we haven't made any progress. It's not the Democrats' fault that it hasn't been through. It's the Republicans' fault, because they haven't been on board with any of these issues, and they don't support any of these issues. They would just let you rot in a corner, I guess. Because think about Obamacare. Like, what was the other option? They didn't have one. They just wanted to be the anti. And I don't even think that they ever sincerely thought that they could beat it or remove it, because President Obama was so smart and strategic with that, and was so well written and in depth and complex because it needed to be. But it also made it almost impossible for them to remove it. And as time went on, it just made it, clearly, like, if you do this, then they're going to lose health insurance. People are going to go bankrupt. People are going to die. So now we're in this COVID crisis. I think that the crisis is really on their side, because they have this fake support that they get online, which, bot networks. So they have they think that they're getting a lot of support from people, but there aren't a ton of anti-vaxxers. There aren't a ton of people who are just, I guess, pro-COVID. There are a lot of people who are scared of needles. There are a lot of people who are scared of getting shots. And there are a lot of people that are able to isolate themselves in suburban communities so that they're not actually at risk as much as people in major cities would be. So they're rich enough to have a fence around their house and have Amazon deliver all their packages and not have that kind of community spread. So they don't have the same threats. And so it's a different kind of world for some people. And I think that, things like the filibuster, those are things that are in our way that, again, in order to beat that, we need to expand our majority so that we have a true majority in the Senate. Because right now we do not, and that's how we have to act as now. Again, procedurally, yes, Manchin and Sinema vote a lot most of the time with Democrats, but this is not helping, because all they're doing, these are basic common sense things that need to help America, and what their stalling does is kill people. And it hurts people. It doesn't do anything beyond that. There's nothing that helps America by stalling this, by negotiating more. Like, people are hurting and they're dying left and right. It is not a game. Their friends, their rich lobbyist friends, are not the ones dying. It's people who are doing their job 12 hours a day, or both jobs, or 3 jobs, where they have no benefits, and they're doing it, risking their lives in a hospital, or delivering packages, or doing something where they actually are putting themselves in danger. So, I mean, that on top of the fact that there's other variants out there that if they spread, and there's a dominant variant that the vaccine is not effective with, or we get further down the line where there's boosters that are needed, and we have all these unvaccinated people, and the only people who qualify for boosters are the people who got vaccinated in the first place. They've fallen so far behind. Where are they going to get their voters? Republicans, like, where are they going to? They're losing voters because of death, and this is why Mitch McConnell has told people to get vaccinated now, because he's losing voters literally. I don't know the exact number, but you are more likely to die of COVID if you're a Republican, because you're also more likely to be unvaccinated. Brainwashed so much via social media and these fake organizations where, oh, yes, we can use Facebook to get 30 people together to go protest at this one clinic, and then we'll make a viral video about that. and then millions of people sit there and stare, look at these whack jobs. What is happening here? Like, I think we'll be able to present the argument next year, and we'll start this in Virginia now and New Jersey. But like, we're going to be able to present the argument as like, here is the America that Republicans want. Here's the America that Democrats want. And I think the vision is so stark and it's so clear as to what we want and what they want. And they've made it so clear on the record that it's very easy to make that divide. We just have to get the message out there. So I am not worried about 2022. I'm definitely not worried about the House. The Senate is what I would be most worried about, but it would not be much different if we were to lose a couple seats. Like, it really wouldn't. We'd be stuck in the same stalemate, but Republicans would be more to blame if they were in the majority. So I think we need to win at least 2 or 3 more seats in the Senate, and then we can start to ram stuff through like it was in the Obama years a little bit, right around Obamacare. It's not an easy thing to do. But I think we have a good chance of doing it because, again, the devastation and the lies and the propaganda, all this stuff is starting to come out via Facebook, obviously, here. And then also you'll have, again, the January 6th involvement will also link back to everything that there'll be other Trump scandals that come out from his administration. There's other things that we have to sweep up. There's other messes that'll come out. I mean, even just Afghanistan, people with their fake hysteria, the guy down 5 bases. We were left with 1 base. We had 3,000 troops, and we were surrounded by 80,000 members of the Taliban, thousands of members of K-ISIS. And then we were expected to stay there and hold down the fort. Basically, we had the risk of thousands of our troops being held hostage by the Taliban, or us having to fight our way out of there. We were left with no option. We were set up to be destroyed at that point. So a lot of these things will come back to haunt them because the reality is there. And I think next year is when truth will prevail. Facebook is facing consequences now, finally, for their lies and inaction. I think Twitter is being proactive to try and not be like Facebook. And I think that other social media companies will follow suit. And with that, I think laws, regulations will come out of this where it makes it illegal to spread propaganda, where it makes it illegal to spread hate that involves things that kill people, like anti-COVID vaccine sentiment that is just nobody cares about it in regards to, like, there's not as much support as they say. And the people who do support it end up dying or getting sick of the virus because they listen to these falsehoods and lies that are spread. So I'm not worried about the election in 2022. I think that obviously the Virginia election is going to be a really key election for the gubernatorial race to show us exactly where we do stand right now. But I'm not worried about it because I think that the arguments are really there. And if they want to vote Republican after all of this, I don't see that as happening as of right now. I just don't.
More MIP after this message. What states do you think are most likely for us to get Senate pickups?
So I think most realistic would be, I want to be careful about this, Pennsylvania, I think, is a clear potential. I think North Carolina is much more blue than it just wasn't organized in the same fashion as it was before. Republicans were super organized in North Carolina. I think Ohio with Tim Ryan, I think he's got a real shot there as well. And I think with Val Demings running in Florida, I also think with Chuck Grassley running in Iowa and Abby Finkenauer, who's much younger. She's one of the youngest members of Congress, or was. I think she's got a phenomenal chance there. I think there will be some upsets as well. I just don't think that there'll be a lot of these Democrats will be outworked. I know Val Demings is one of the hardest working members of Congress out there, so her candidacy is phenomenal. Tim Ryan, same thing. In Pennsylvania, we've got some good candidates there as well. So I think those are going to be the key states. And I don't know if there's many others. You know, obviously we need to defend in Georgia. That's going to be a key one as well. I think in Nevada as well, we'll have to defend. But I think we pick up probably Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Florida is going to be the tough one. Florida is 5 states in one. Florida is always a tough. We'll be fighting down there as well. But like That's a harder state to win. It's just a more difficult race. Rubio's a different kind of character. It's going to be a lot easier in North Carolina with retirement, Pennsylvania with retirement, and Ohio as well. Like it's just, I think those three states are the states we win those three states and we protect in Georgia, and I think we're in good shape. Then we have a real majority at that point.
Yeah. No, that's important. And you're right about Val. I mean, she's got a lot of energy, but it's an uphill battle. A Cubs fan described, a Democrat who's also a Cubs fan described to me Florida as the Cubs, Chicago Cubs of states, because, you're right there. You get right there. And then it just something happens. So we have to be sober about that. Talk to us about Virginia. You're involved in that race. We've done well in Virginia. Normally it's gone back and forth, but since the Obama years, we've prevented that, have kept it blue. Is it going to stay blue this go round?
That's my hope. I have concerns just because, as always, it's an off-year kind of election, and it's McAuliffe running, so he's got the name recognition. Glenn Youngkin is worth close to $500 million, and he's a Republican nominee, and he's a template kind of seemingly moderate Republican who's not moderate at all. He's very right-wing, very religious, and very anti-choice. He has a lot of those. It's weird because he'll say things that are very unpopular with Republicans. Like he'll say everybody should get vaccinated. Yeah. And then he tries to qualify it with like, but it should be your choice. And it's like, okay, all right. So you support vaccinations, but you don't, but you do, and so that kind of waffling doesn't help. And our first ad we're hitting tomorrow, I guess we're going to focus on his business relationships because a lot of his business relationships are with places that Republicans are not okay with. And so I think one of the keys is to make sure that he's exposed for who he is. And people are reminded of, like, before they start voting, like, this is not the guy that you want there. This is a corrupt guy who's been in the business of politics without being in politics for years. He's another Trump-like figure, except he's scarier because he can play the game in a way where he seems like a normal human being, but in reality, he could be an evil politician if he gets elected. And at the same time, he's also been caught on undercurrent. One of the programs that I work with is he was caught on video by Lauren Windsor that is saying that he would stop everything that he could involving any kind of President Biden agenda, any kind of agenda item, anything that would really help out Virginia. So money being sent to the state, things involving Medicare, Medicaid, funding just in general. And so it is a normal businessman who ran, a multi-billion-dollar business for years, worked in various countries around the world. And I think tomorrow we'll make it very, very clear which country we should be most scared about his ties. And I think that combined with his anti-women rhetoric and on top of just his obstruction kind of driven attitude, all of that comes into a combo where it's like Terry McAuliffe seems like the safe, right decision for now. He knows how to work in government. He never really had a big scandal. I think what I'm worried about is, you have the Fairfax and the Northam different scandals at different times. Fairfax, I'm not sure. We never researched the whole potential scandal there and what happened. But with Northam, obviously, you have the painting face and all that pretty racist stuff. And so it does make me think that maybe some Democrats might be leery about this, but I don't know. I think Democrats really take this seriously, and I hope that we win by 10 or so in Virginia. Yeah. I'd take it by 1, but we don't want to take any chances, so we just want to take this very seriously because, again, Youngkin's going to spend money everywhere. He's already spending his own money, and he has hundreds of millions of dollars that he can spend. He won't spend that much, but he's got millions he could just shell out in a moment's notice. So we need to prepare for that and just why not give that outside support? I think New Jersey, we're fine. I'm not worried about that. His polling is ridiculous right now, and he's fairly popular throughout the state. Virginia, you only have one term that you can serve. So that's why Terry McAuliffe had served before for 4 years, and now he can run again because you just cannot be consecutive. So, right. Yeah, so Murphy can run for re-election in New Jersey. It's a lot different story. He can build a war chest and whatnot. McAuliffe had to start over again. Luckily, he's run before. He knows how to work and get the fundraising off the ground and everything. So it looks like McAuliffe is going to win, but we don't want to take any chances. And there's no risk in just, reminding people exactly what needs to happen and activating people in Maryland, Virginia, DC, and North Carolina to get the support for Virginia to make sure that it's an example of, no, Democrats are not heading things in the wrong direction. It's clear in Virginia. And I think we need that example moving into next year.
Yeah, you're right. Let me ask you this. Well, let me make a statement and ask a question. It would seem to me that Charlottesville itself is a lingering issue for Virginians. Do you agree? Will that also impact the way people vote? And what has been the Republicans' position on that? Has it come up? Has he decried it? I mean, is it still an issue?
He's against it. He's been against it. What happened there. It's still an issue. We're being careful how we approach that. We do want to remind people what happened and where Republicans were in the state when that happened, and how some of them were marching with them with the tiki torches, and some of them defended them, and some of them downplayed it. And some of them have since disparaged Heather Heyer and the police officers who died in the helicopter. And that day, people sometimes forget about that as well. So, I think we're going to carefully remind people through family members of victims and elsewhere to, exactly what kind of leadership you need in office. You don't need a person who would support the person they were supporting. And that's what McAuliffe would not support that, and by any means. And I think Youngkin would be another guy, both sides kind of issue guy. Yeah. And so making it clear, but at the same time, the sensitivity of the moment of making sure it's clear that it's not being used for that kind of purpose. But I think we will remind people exactly of what happened that day, and just, how you need a governor in charge to prevent things like that from happening. And when they do, you need a governor in charge who does not agree with that kind of sentiment. And you can't even risk having a governor in charge that would possibly support that, or both sides it, or have supporters that are marching in that crowd. Like you can't do that. And so we're going to be sensitive about it, but you know how we also do it. We like to make sure that it's a very clear message and succinct. It will be something that we bring up. It will not be, it's so traumatic of an event that we want to be careful how it's presented. It's not something that we're going to present to Republicans as like, look at what you did or something like that. It's more like, Democrats, look at how far we've come from this moment and how we rebounded in the state of Virginia to now. And so, again, just being strategic about the messaging, because we want to be careful. We can't coordinate with any campaigns. So we want to be careful about anything that we're doing. We know that it affects McAuliffe's race. We just want to make sure that it doesn't negatively affect his race, because then it can backfire. So when it comes to sensitive issues like that, we do want to be careful. At the same time, we don't want to fear to be driving people to the polls. We want more inspirational. So maybe we hear from Miss Bo, who's Heather Heyer's mom. Maybe we hear from other people who can give words of inspiration as to where we need to go. And maybe that place is McAuliffe. I would assume that she'd support his candidacy. I don't speak for her, though. But
I think that approach is both responsible and appropriate. However, I like to remind people of this. In 2006, when George Allen, I think he was running against Chuck Robb again for the Senate, and he referred to an Indian man as a macaca. Video went viral. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Man, the morning of Election Day in Virginia, that morning, the day people voted, someone posted signs all over the state. They were you couldn't go anywhere and not see these signs. And it was one word on the sign. It was macaca. And that, it didn't have any other commentary, just said macaca. Mm-hmm. And George Allen got turned out. So just want to, put that in your mind and think about it. You're right. I think you do have to be respectful. It was traumatic. Right. But, if there's even a subtle way like that, just to, nudge people aside now, be clear who this is and what can happen if this person wins. The last thing is, you mentioned January 6th a few times. You tweeted that Mike Pence was an accomplice.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, he knew about the planning that they were doing. He knew about what they were trying to do. He knew about the planned attempted coup, the failed coup, and he There was strategic framework. There were lawyers involved. There was pressure inside and outside. He never leaked any of that out. He never made it clear to the American people that they're trying to do this. He let it happen. And then even up till that day, he was considering either leaving after that vote when he had left or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what Speaker Pelosi said to him and McConnell, but that's why they went back in there. Speaker Pelosi is the champion here, not Pence or McConnell. Whatever they did struck fear into them, where she had proof of something or knows something. I don't know exactly, but get your butts back in there or I'm going to destroy you. Something along those lines, I would guess, but in the Speaker Pelosi way. And so I see him as acting like an innocent bystander because some of the people were chanting hang Pence and things like that. But look at how he's defended what happened that day. Look at how he acts like that didn't happen. Look at how he acts like the security cameras aren't really accurate. Like, I mean, it's the same kind of despicable things. He had spoken out against it, but then he didn't. Like, when did he talk to Trump? When did he talk with other advisors outside the White House? When did he beg for help? Did he ask for help? Was he smiling during this? Like, was he like thinking this is great? Like, I hope I don't have to deal with this. I hope I don't have to go back. Did he not plan on going back there? You know, like what we need to know every single detail of what he was doing, everybody around him, all the communications as well. And so he was the vice president and his boss was sitting there doing nothing at the same time while the Capitol was under attack. And yes, Pence made some game time calls because Trump was nowhere to be found. But these were calls that I think would have been made without even Pence at that point. So I don't have any sympathy for Mike Pence. I don't think anyone really should. He knew what he signed up for, and when push came to shove, he ended up siding with Donald even after the events of that day. Right. And there's obviously evidence that he has that we need to have, that January 6th committee probably already has, FBI definitely already has. So I would expect him, if Trump were to be indicted, Pence should be as well, because he's a co-conspirator. He's in on it. He knew about it. He was aware. He never told anybody about it. Never thought it was a problem. Afterwards, tried to cover for it. And so every step of the way, Pence has been a co-conspirator of everything. And my guess would be that if anyone planned anything involving legislation, involving any timing of things, involving Congress, like Pence is the one who organized it. Pence is the one who knew about it. Pence is the one who worked with members of Congress about it. So, yes, he didn't go in a certain way that day that they wanted him to, but he considered it. And like that helped lead up to the events of that day. If they were in the White House planning an attack on the Capitol, whether or not he wanted his own people to be hurt or other people to be hurt is yet to be seen. I'm pretty sure that he wanted his own people to be hurt and then say, look at what they've done to us. I'm, martial law, la, 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 la. So I think that Pence wants that sympathy. And we pause for a moment because we're like, wow, like that is strong. They said these things, but Pence kind of allowed this all to happen, and he knew about the everything that could happen that day and Trump's plans for that day. He wasn't cut out of the process, and so he's definitely not a witness anymore in my eyes. He's trying to talk it down, and he's just another co-conspirator who needs to be in handcuffs, arrested by the DOJ for sedition against the United States or conspiracy against the United States. But it's I think we're seeing a clearer and clearer picture that we're going to see a really disturbing picture come early next year. I don't think that this is going to be, it's worse than we could ever imagine already. Having a plotted outline by a legal team of how to throw a coup makes it a failed coup. It's not an attempted coup. They tried. This was planned. Right. And it's weird. It is weird how like every step of the process, if one person chose to go one way or the other, he may still be in the White House right now. And so luckily we've had some people who stepped up and made the decisions how they were supposed to. I'm not giving them applause. This is their job they're supposed to do. And they didn't really have any choices or discretion. But Trump wanted him to break the law. Trump wanted him to break those rules. And so, yes, Pence didn't do that one thing, but I'm pretty sure he would have been overridden. They would have said, oh, let's try and challenge in court. But if he wasn't going to read the votes, somebody else would have. So I don't think he had much leeway. in anything that he could have done. But if he did, I think he would have done it. And I think we need to consider all the possibilities that he worked with Trump and advised him along the way. And we need to assume that. We need to assume the worst out of him because he is one of the worst human beings that exists on the planet.
You're right, though. When you think about it, there's no way he can just plead total ignorance to any of this.
No.
He knew something was going to happen that day. There's no way he was totally in the dark on it. There's no way possible. And you're right. And then again, as you've also alluded to, with these trials are going to be very ripe next year. And let's be honest, there's a culture within our party to be pessimistic, sometimes to be doom and gloom. Oh, we ain't gonna make it. And I mean, that's part of the argument. Sentiment and management around saying, well, we can't get rid of filibuster because what's going to happen when we're not in power? Well, if you don't get rid of it and change the voting laws, then you won't be in power. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling, but we have a tendency to do that. I remember when Obama's first midterm came and they pretty much announced at the White House, oh, we expect to lose all the seats. I'm like, what are you doing? That's not, so we have to get in a better habit of being more optimistic. And those Democrats, even some in the swing districts who are a little afraid of things, I hadn't thought about what you said. It's as if they've forgotten there are going to be trials next year. A lot more is going to come out. And another important thing you said, Scott said, I want you all to understand too. If that fool decides to announce his reelection plans during the midterms, that only helps as well. We use that, that mobilizes people because I don't think anybody wants that to come back at all. He's trying to sue to get his Twitter account back or whatever. I know I said last thing, but one more thing. I'd be remiss if we didn't get your thoughts around the whole Facebook whistleblower that was on 60 Minutes and then Facebook shut down the next day. What are your thoughts about what's going on over there?
And I find it weird that there would be few things that could change the story besides a Facebook shutdown the next day. So I think self-inflicted wounds are possible. I'm not going to spout out conspiracy theories, but I just find the timing to be impeccable and weird. I think that this is a person who has the ability to do this and is being listened to and taken seriously, which is good. But this is just par for the course. Obviously, Facebook seems to have been one of Trump's biggest supporters, and because Trump paid them money. And the same thing with the Russian government and Chinese government and affiliated people to that, letting people do whatever they want. It's less. So obviously blame is on Facebook, but we need to make laws to make it illegal. We need to regulate it. We need to make sure that there's oversight with it. We need to break up big tech. We need to make sure that they can actually be managed instead of just have free reign and acting like it has something to do with free speech, when in reality it has to do with free propaganda, just reigning over everything and people being able to buy in from anywhere. At this point, Putin could throw in his own money to run ads in support or against somebody, and there's nothing that we could do about it. It doesn't make any sense. At the same time, Facebook isn't held accountable because there aren't laws on the books that say you're held accountable because you helped spread this disinformation that killed people via COVID or did this X, Y, or Z. There needs to be consequences, and the consequences cannot be fines. There needs to be criminal. And so people need to go to prison, but people can't go to prison over this because they haven't crossed the line with as many laws because we don't have them on the books. So we need to figure out a way to work together to get this so that we can regulate. I think this is a bigger story than what it is. I think that they chose money over people, and I think that they've hurt millions, countless people in the process. And we knew this. We've known this the whole time. It's just we have proof now. We have more and more proof. I think that we're going to see this expand from here. And I don't think that Facebook is going to disappear, but I do think that they'll be under new management by next year. I don't think it's tenable for Zuckerberg to stay in power. I don't think it's tenable for the same board to stay in power. I mean, this is ultimate corruption, and it's an affront against everybody because they're letting people be manipulated for money, and that's just not right, and that's not good for anybody. And overall, it hurts people. And so we need to recognize that people need to pay the price for that. And if the only way that we can do it is by having new laws that make it so that it prevents it again. But again, it can't be, oh, Facebook pays this $50 million fine. No, people need to go to prison if they do this again. And so we need to make new laws on the books. And that prevents it from happening. I think that's what this whistleblower will help do, is they'll actually pass something, because it seems like there's bipartisan criticism and support of Facebook and big tech overall for their manipulation and their willful ignorance, or however you want to paint it. There's just been so much where it's just they sit on their hands and they act like, oh, well, I don't know what's going on. I just work on the Trump campaign but get paid by Facebook. Like, there were staffers of
Right.
Facebook on the Trump campaign. Hillary refused to have them on there because she thought it was weird or funny. It's very, for example, I'll leave you with this. We met with Facebook in their DC office to talk about progressive groups who have been suspended from their accounts.
Mhm.
And this is in early 2019, I believe. And it was a week later, the coalition's account on Facebook got what we called a boot. It wasn't suspended, but it will also cut our reach by like 90%. And they were like, you posted this, and this looks like false information. And it was from like a year ago or something. Like, it was something random. And it took us months for them to figure out what was going on. And we never actually had a process that was figured out. And we were talking about Republicans and Democrats. We have to have a process as to why are we being suspended, or why is this account being suspended? What's the reasons behind it? You can't just do it Wizard of Oz style. And I think, again, this has to do with regulations and figuring things out like that, because it's not to try and slow down the process or social media, but people are dying. People are being brainwashed into killing themselves because of social media companies and them just letting people do that. And why would they choose to do the right thing if they sit there and they'll lose billions of dollars because of it? It's obviously evil, but we need to clean this up. And I think it's our opportunity to do so. And if we don't act now, if Congress doesn't act now on this, I don't know if they ever will.
Yeah, you're right. We've got to do something. Absolutely right. Folks, he's the executive director and founder of the Democratic Coalition. Be sure to follow at the Dem Coalition. Also host of his own popular podcast, the Dworkin Report, available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow the Dworkin Report at Dworkin Report. Scott Dworkin, our friend. Thank you, brother, for joining me today, okay?
Thank you for everything you do. Appreciate you having me.
All right, man.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.